I can't stop thinking about Attack on Titan's ending. Since watching the final episode, it feels like it has been almost constant. Sometimes I'll find myself just staring off into space, thinking about the ending. I'll be there lying wide awake at 3 a.m., looking blankly at the ceiling, contemplating the pursuit of freedom, the never-ending cycle of violence, and hope for a better tomorrow. You best believe I'm thinking about Attack on Titan. YouTube is recommending me videos about hallucigenia, which is something I never even heard of until the finale. I'm reading about deterministic time loops and bootstrap paradoxes. I have been completely lost in the Attack on Titan sauce. Now, I don't really talk about much anime on this channel, but with how much I've been thinking about Attack on Titan since it ended, I honestly couldn't help but make a video to talk through some of my thoughts. If you don't watch anime and have no idea what Attack on Titan is, do yourself a favor and start the series. In my opinion, it is some of the best storytelling that I have had the pleasure of experiencing, with some absolutely unforgettable moments, a fascinating setting that is as horrendous as it is beautiful, huge reveals that feel earned and well foreshadowed, and a litany of complex and interesting characters. Even if you don't normally watch anime, I feel like the series is worth checking out, and can serve as a great introduction to what the medium has to offer. Attack on Titan created such a high standard for itself, as everything leading up to the finale can only be considered a masterpiece. Providing a satisfying conclusion worthy of all that came before it was not going to be an easy task. And while I don't think it reached the heights of the series' greatest moments, I still think it does a good job wrapping up the story, and I personally found myself loving its ending despite some of its flaws. It delivered everything it needed to in order to leave me satisfied, and even more in love with the series than I was before. I will also admit that my expectations for the ending were lowered coming into it, based on rumblings I heard from manga readers who experienced the ending 2 years prior. For those 2 years, all I heard about the manga ending was that it was the worst ending ever, and that it ruined the entire series. Attack on Titan had long been dubbed the Game of Thrones of anime, and many even went as far as to say that the ending of Attack on Titan was worse than that of Game of Thrones. So with all this negativity surrounding the series' final conclusion, my expectations were hampered to say the least. As I was watching the finale, I was almost waiting for it to get bad, thinking that any second my enjoyment would instantly fade to dust as terrible writing would come down and destroy everything that I loved about the series. But, at least for me, that never happened. I was sitting there, watching the end credits, feeling fulfilled, and feeling emotional about the 10-year journey that we all went on. I knew that the anime ending was said to have adapted the manga ending, so I wondered what pissed off manga readers so badly that they hated this ending. After doing a bit of research, I found that despite the endings being virtually the same, there were some pieces of dialogue that were changed, and some ideas were allowed to be further fleshed out in the anime. I do think that these changes help better the ending, and despite being seemingly minor, they had a huge impact. The creator, Hajime Isayama, has always said that the anime is the most fully realized version of this story, and in terms of the ending, I think that is true. Attack on Titan has always felt meticulously planned out, with little hints in the background that foreshadow massive reveals to come. It always seemed that every new plot development, character motivation, and expansion of the lore felt tightly written. The finale feels a little looser, with some of the mechanics of the way things work being much more vague and open for interpretation. While I think some of this vagueness leads to some of the ending's issues, mostly when it comes to some of the logistics of how things work, I think it also provides the community with a great chance for discussion. I think a lot of the criticism surrounding the ending comes from some very uncharitable interpretations of the things presented. Attack on Titan's ending plays a lot with the core themes of the show, as well as using a lot of symbolism to convey some of this messaging. A few things are left open-ended, and leave the viewer to fill in the blank to some degree, allowing them to find their own meaning. I think the discussions surrounding the ending make it even more compelling for me, as it's interesting to see other people's interpretations of the events and characters. The animation looked absolutely incredible, nailing the action sequences, but also managing to show the beauty in the more quiet moments. The soundtrack was also as amazing as ever, as the music throughout the entire series has always helped to elevate it to that next level. The voice acting was also superb, with each performer giving it their absolute everything as they reached the conclusion of their 10-year journey. I know all of these things were kind of expected for a show as big as Attack on Titan, but I wanted to highlight them nonetheless. One of the things I enjoyed most about the ending is that it felt like every character got a moment to shine. Whether it be an emotional moment when things seemed most dire, a moment of heroism as the characters continue to fight for what they believe in, a long-awaited reunion. I feel like all of our characters were given something to bring their journey to an end in the most fitting and satisfying way. If you haven't seen Attack on Titan or watched the finale yet, skip to the time on screen, as I will be talking spoilers for the ending. Eren Yeager and his journey throughout the series has got to be one of my favorite trajectories for a character ever. I wouldn't call someone who wipes out 80% of humanity a hero or a good person.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
But through following Eren's story from powerless victim to god-powered destroyer of humanity, we get to see every facet of Eren's character and his journey towards his decision. Eren's character shows how the cycle of violence is perpetrated and continued, as after Eren is traumatized and subjected to the hate of the world, he lashes out, becoming the devil the world feared he always was. Since the beginning, Eren's answer to violence was always more violence, to take the freedom of others before they could take his. He was so wrapped up in being free that somewhere along the way he became a slave to it, with his determination and dogged pursuit leading him to his ultimate fate. I think for a lot of people who didn't like the ending, Eren is at the center as to why. People had an issue with seeing a more human side of Eren, as well as some people finding his motivations for the rumbling to be a little confusing or unsatisfying. As far as the not liking Eren's immaturity, it boils down mostly to his scene with Armin. I understand how this can feel a little tonally jarring, but I think many people overreact to it, claiming that it assassinates Eren's character. I see it as a moment of weakness for Eren, that he is only comfortable showing because he is with Armin. Saying that he doesn't want to die, or for Mikasa to move on, is Eren giving in to his selfishness for a moment as he laments his imminent fate. But considering that he literally tells Mikasa to move on and forget about him, and also acknowledges that he has to die and join the victims who died in the rumbling, I feel like this criticism is a bit of a moot point. In regards to Eren's motivations, one of the reasons that I enjoy Eren as a character and his ultimate decision to carry out the rumbling so much is that there's not a singular, clear-cut reason. There are many. Eren had a list of reasons to carry out the rumbling: protecting Paradis, having his friends live long and happy lives, eliminating the Titans, and pursuing his vision of true freedom. Eren doesn't have a singular motivation, but multiple motivations that he is invested in at any given time. At different times, each motivating factor can be more or less important to him, and at times they are even contradictory to one another. Like when he is fighting Marley, protecting Paradis is his most important motivator. When he is with his friends, them living a long and happy life is the most important factor for him. When he is doing the rumbling and sees the sight in the sky, freedom is the most important thing to him. Eren is an incredibly complex and at times contradictory character, and his motivations and decisions are often a reflection of that. After Eren is stopped, Mikasa has a makeout session, and Armin is named a hero, we go back to where it all started, under the tree. As we watch Paradis grow and change, and Mikasa and the rest of Eren's friends live out their lives, we eventually see that at some point in the future, the peace that was achieved ends, illustrating another one of Attack on Titan's main themes, which is that conflict is inevitable. Eren's rumbling brought a chance for peace, for a time, as the world recovered and the heroes did their best to mediate between the island and the outside world. If Eren completed the rumbling, sometime in the future, Paradis would have turned on itself and started a war for some reason or another. Conflict is inevitable, and the cycle of violence is bound to repeat itself. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still strive for peace. Some people have said that they don't like the end credits because it makes it feel like what Eren did was pointless. I have to disagree on this point though, as even if a temporary peace is achieved, that is still something to be valued and treasured. It's seemingly hundreds of years from the time Eren is buried under the tree to the time that Paradis is destroyed. Achieving this temporary peace matters, as it paused the cycle for a little while. I think a great visual that contributes to a lot of the thematic elements of the show is the scene of the baby on the cliff. Even though things look absolutely hopeless, and no matter how many times they pass the baby up, it will likely still meet its death there, keeping that baby alive, even if it's only for a few more minutes, is worth it, because it represents the hope of what could be. I feel like it's such a striking image, and adds a lot to the ending, especially as the rumbling stops, and they are left with what they fought so hard to preserve. Perhaps my favorite part of the entire finale was the conversation between Armin and Zeke in the paths. I think it serves to highlight one of the best themes of the show, and that is despite the evils and cruelty of the world, there is still so much beauty in it.
この世界は残酷だ。そしてとても美しい。
Even though conflict is inevitable and we will face hard times, there are these little moments of joy and hope that make it worth being alive. These seemingly inconsequential moments can have the biggest impact on a person's life, can be the thing that makes them the happiest.
この何でもない一瞬がすごく大切な気がして。
俺はずっとキャッチボールをしているだけでよかったよ。
Even though they don't matter in the grand scheme of the world, these little moments of joy are the reason to be. They represent hope and happiness, and even though the world is a dangerous, hateful place, the pursuit of peace and the peace that these moments bring should always be pursued, even when it seems like there's nothing but darkness. I think this is a beautiful idea, and Armin and Zeke's conversation did a brilliant job depicting this. To me, this feels like the core theme of the show. Attack on Titan was an incredibly special series. It has some of my favorite moments in all of media, and I am so happy to have experienced it. For me, the ending served as a fitting conclusion to its story and characters. However, as the debate concerning the series and its ending rages on, this back and forth lends itself to some of the series' themes. Attack on Titan's legacy will continue on for years to come, and it may be a while before we see a show of its significance again. To Isayama, all of the voice actors, animators, musicians, and everyone else who dedicated their heart to this story and allowed us all to experience it, thank you. If you somehow made it to the end of the video, I want to thank you for watching. I could honestly talk about this series for hours on end, but even this felt very cathartic. I don't usually make anime content on this channel, but I'm definitely a fan of anime, and every now and then, when I can't help myself, I might make an anime video. But for the most part, I analyze live-action TV shows and movies, so if that interests you, please consider subscribing. If you enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate it if you left a like. It really helps the channel. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.